Well, I'm extremely pleased to be able to interview Steve Holt, and he's going to tell me about his very long theory of constraints journey, when it started, where it led him where he is now. So, tell me, where did it all start?
So I started in like many people in the 80s in quality improvement efforts. And I had taken very early on, I was able to get into a quality improvement class. And then we started an off-hour study group. And we were studying a lot of Deming, right? And we did a whole study group on Deming. And I found it to be fascinating, but Deming never actually told you what to do. Mm-hmm. I was able to take a 4-day workshop with Dr. Deming in a giant ballroom in Washington, D.C. And then after deciding that, then about this time, Peter Senge came out with the fifth discipline.
Right.
So we started studying that, and we started doing causal loop diagrams, and I found them to be fascinating, but at the same time, the ones that we created were never as good as the ones in the book. And even if they did tell you what an issue was, they didn't tell you what to do about it. Mm-hmm. You were on your own. Now, the next thing that happened then was one of my friends came in one day with a copy of Deborah Smith's book, The Theory of Constraints and Its Implications for Management Accounting.
Okay.
Now, the appendix of that book was the first public description of the tools of the thinking process.
Okay.
So we taught ourselves the thinking process by reading the appendix of that book. And we were very blessed in the fact that Alan Leader lived in the same town. And I remember him showing up one day, and we were showing him our current reality tree, which was just getting larger and larger and larger. And there's a point when he just couldn't take it anymore, and he said, wait. It's like, what is the purpose of a current reality tree? And we said, to identify the core problem. And he said, correct. And have you identified the core problem? And we said, yes. And he said, then stop. We were creating what we now call current reality hedges. They were not trees.
Okay.
And sometime after that then, a friend of mine was in the exercise facility, and he was reading the ball. And the person in the machine next to him said, oh, are you in the class too? And he said, what class? And this was the very first year that the Washington State University program was made available. And we couldn't get into it that year, but then the following year, for the second ever class, I was in that class. And so
and
that
was
1997.
Okay.
And things have gotten to the point where I ended up helping out with that so much, and then helping be a teaching assistant, that now that...
you went first in, you went as a student?
As a student, yeah. And then...
and very quickly they decided it would be better if you were a teacher.
Well, that didn't happen quickly. I just felt that it was valuable to help other people learn it.
Right.
And besides, it helped me practice too.
Yeah.
This year then, Dr. Russ Johnson, who's taken over, contacted me and said, well, would you actually like to help teach it? So I got to sign up and be an adjunct professor. So there's a bit of a circular irony of that, right? Because I took the class from Dr. James Holt, and people have assumed for years that we're related somehow, and we're not. Mm-hmm. But now it's come back to there's another Holt helping to teach that same class. So, and all of essentially almost 20 years later.
Okay. So you go into your first year at Washington State University. What happens then?
Well, so then of course, here I am, a newly minted Jonah, and I want to go practice things. I want to try things out, and ended up getting involved in a bit of a think tank thinking about what we could do, and that led to a critical chain implementation, one I reported on, I believe, in 2007 at TOCICO. And that was aircraft design. And it was a very interesting experience in the sense that we had gotten training material which we got using from Tony Rizzo. Mm-hmm. So we were teaching his 2-day training class, which we felt was very effective. But that's the only actual outside consulting we ever got. And part of the reason the 2007 presentation was a bit scary was we had no idea how the TOC community would take what we were talking about. We were concerned that we might show up and say, this is the way we implement critical chain, and be told, that's not how you do critical chain.
Okay, so what happened? So Boeing arrives and says, we've been doing some reading in our corner. We've implemented critical chain on designing an airplane.
It actually worked. And
so you weren't completely on the wrong track.
We had to do it. No, we did some things I think that were a little atypical, mm-hmm. And at the same time, it was essentially necessary for us to fit in with the kind of policies and procedures and metrics and things like mm-hmm. that existed at the time.
Yeah,
we did some things. Essentially, because of the need to coexist within an earned value environment, that we initially thought was overly detailed for mm-hmm. critical chain.
Yeah.
And, interestingly enough, in one of the presentations today, Wolfram Miller's, he talks about projects at minimum viable, integratable points, and I think almost by happenstance, we mm-hmm. kind of lucked in doing something around that level.
Okay.
So, there's always this aspect of how much of it is being good and how much of it's being lucky and how much of it's a little of both.
Okay. So, after that?
Well, I decided at some point there that I felt that it was actually before this, but I felt that it's like, well, maybe I should try my hand at management on that, and did a fair amount of trying to use within TOC within that, and I think really a lot of what I've done with TOC has been an advocate. I do a lot of advocating for the thinking process mm-hmm. as ways to solve problems. Have created some training material on just simple aspects of cause-effect logic, simple aspects of how to do conflict clouds, mm-hmm. things like that. And so in a sense, I'm sort of like a captive in-house consultant, mm-hmm. Which is really, frankly, a pretty interesting job to have. Mm-hmm. It's probably not official by any stretch of the imagination, but still, it's a lot of fun.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your talk story.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.